Even if they've tried and failed carnivore a couple of times, like get some support, get a team. There's tons of coaches out there. Or if you need like intense help, I'm here.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching our videos. If you'd like to support us some more, you can explore our homemade natural skincare products at purelytallow.com. Thank you so much for supporting my small business.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Carnivore Revolution. I'm Serena, and my guest today is Emily Penton. You may know her as Inner Clarity System on Instagram. And this video has been a long time coming because we've been friends for a while and we did some stuff on Instagram. But this one in particular is Emily is one of my favorite people. And if you don't know Emily, you are truly, it's an honor to be your friend. So thank you for spending time with me today.
Awesome. Thank you, Serena. Yeah, it took us a while to get this scheduled because we're both busy women, but it's so worth it to be able to connect with you.
Yeah, so wonderful. So I do want to get into your coaching later on after we talk about your story and stuff, because I think your coaching is just so different than your average coaching. So if you are struggling in life in general, not just with carnivore stuff, just sit tight. We're going to talk some carnivore stuff, but then we are going to get into Emily's coaching, which is good for carnivores and non-carnivores. So let's start with your weight loss and healing journey, because that's where it begins for most of us. We start off with carnivore, either to lose weight. Most of the time it's to lose weight, and then it ends up being for healing. But then a lot of us stick around because we want to share the story. We want to share how important it is, how amazing it is, and share our journeys and what has happened with us. So I like to start there because I think that's so important.
Yeah, my story is a little bit different because I was a big girl. I was 5'8", and I think at my most I was like 260. But that wasn't even on my radar. I looked like every other woman in Southeast Missouri that I saw at Walmart, like we all look like little bowling balls. And that wasn't even on my radar. What was on my radar was that I had debilitating mental illness. I had bipolar disorder that had turned into rapid cycling. So it wasn't just like, oh, I'm crazy for a month and then I'm stable for a month or whatever. It went into, I didn't know who I was from one day to the next. And it was difficult. And then I, through my journey, realized that for the past 10 years, I had been experiencing symptoms of multiple sclerosis. So when everything hit the fan and it was just all at once, I was either going to the psych ward, or I was going to the nursing home, or I was going to take my life. And thankfully, my brother told me about the carnivore diet. And February 24th of 2019, I stopped eating cookies and donuts and pizza and soda and beer and all the things. And I started only eating ribeyes and burgers and chicken and ribs and just animal meat and animal fat. And my last bipolar episode was April of 2019. My last MS symptom was May 9th of 2019. And then my last psych med was September of 2019. So it's 5 years ago. And all of this stuff has resolved from me eating animal meat. And I lost 120 pounds.
Which was just extra. That was like the icing on the proverbial cake, right?
Icing on the steak.
Yeah. Butter on the steak.
Butter on the steak.
Yeah. Gosh, I wish I'd have said that first. I wish I'd thought of that. So that's amazing. That story is just amazing. So how many months was it before you started like really feeling a difference? Or how long? Maybe it was weeks, maybe not months, but how long was it before you noticed a difference?
Yeah, I would say it was the end of the 4th week for me that I got a glimpse of hope, and it was just for 10 minutes, but I had 40 years of darkness. And, people would always say like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, no, my tunnel was pitch black and endless. Like there was no light anywhere. There wasn't even a crack of light. And so when I experienced joy for 10 minutes, I was like, oh, what is this? What is this emotion? Like, oh, what is this hope? Yeah. And then the next day I experienced it for 15 minutes. Amazing. And then it just kept getting more until now, like I can't have a bad day. Like I always see the light at the end of the tunnel. I always see the hope that is there. And I thought I was just a freak of nature, but I started telling my story. And now I've got thousands of people that have had the same thing when they stopped eating the sugar and the processed foods.
Was it a difficult transition for you? Because would you identify yourself previously? Would you identify yourself as a carb and sugar addict?
100%. Yep. I had to eat every 2 to 4 hours. I would sleep with either a container of icing or a container of peanut butter on my nightstand, so that if I woke up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or whatever, I could eat a couple of tablespoons and then go back to sleep. I would eat whatever. I would make cookies. I would make 2 batches,
Yep.
so that I could eat the entire dough of one batch, and then I could cook cookies and eat the cookies of the other batch. Entire pizzas by myself, cartons of ice cream. And I was just insatiable. I would definitely say I was a binge eater because there was no bottom to my pit at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really crazy. So was the transition hard for you, or because of your brother, you had just made up your mind and you like flipped the switch and then that was it for you?
No, I definitely flipped a switch. But my why was so huge. I was at the, not only the pit of misery, but I had like dug a hole. Like I had no hope for the rest of my life. And so I was willing to try anything to relieve the bipolar disorder. When I realized through Amber Hearn's story that it worked for her 10 years previous. So now it's been 15 years that she's managed her bipolar disorder. I needed to know that it was possible. But for me personally, my transition into carnivore was all in, but it was miserable. So I didn't cheat at all. I remember my first day, I reported back to my brother and I said, I ate this and this and this and this and this and a tablespoon of honey. And he goes, why the tablespoon of honey? And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, don't do that. And I was like, okay. So that's it. I had a tablespoon of honey the first day and that's it.
That's so funny that the way he asked you, I just find that like, why? And then your face, I don't know.
I didn't know. I was just like, it seemed like the lesser of evils. But he was like, just don't. And I was like, okay, I won't. And I didn't. But I felt like I had the flu for, I would say at least the first 2 weeks. Headache, nausea, body aches, and no energy. Like no energy, almost more kind of like brain fog. It was just like, I think about it like a car going from like diesel engine fuel to like a gasoline engine fuel. Like I was literally switching systems to go from sugar carb burner to being a fat burner. But then once the cravings went away I would say the end of the 4th week, it was just like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
And then it was so much easier.
And so what about strictness? Like, so you were really strict then and you made it through all that time to heal and get better. And how strict are you now?
Yeah, I was strict for a long time. I was super strict, and through, really fine tuning my body, I realized that I was even reacting to some meats, because at first I was on food stamps. So I was just getting, just the cheapest, meat I could. And I was getting, just the store-bought chicken and pork and everything. And I realized that I responded best to beef. So I pretty much within the first 8 months, but by 8 months, I went full lion diet, where I was just eating ribeyes and burgers, and that was pretty much it. And then I realized that I was reacting to some of the store-bought meat, and I had to refine it even more to go to the farm. And so I've been pretty much from the farm ever since. Every once in a while, I'll go out to a restaurant, and it's usually not always a great experience in that I just don't feel as great as I do eating from the farm. That's just where I feel best. I haven't found a local source. I haven't researched a local source of chicken, but I'm sure if I found a local source, it would be better. But that's where I'm at.
So spices, anything, so nothing but meat, mostly beef and spices or anything like that? Or no, are you still super strict with everything?
Yeah, what happens for me with spices is, like, for example, I went out with some friends, on Friday, and they wanted to go to Mexican, and I'm like, "Okay, like, what can I do here?" And I was like, "You know what? Like, it's not gonna kill me. I can have some bell peppers. I can have, the steak in the
Okay.
fajita,
Yeah.
and then some guacamole and some sour cream, and I'll be okay." So
Mhm.
I eat it, but the seed oils and then the spices, as soon as I got done eating, I was craving everything. I was thinking about all this other food, like,
Mhm.
and it just like opened up my mind
Mhm.
to craving all the things. And so I found whenever I just do Redmond salt, I don't
Mhm.
have all those cravings. So I
Yeah.
try to stay away from seasonings, not necessarily because of the reactions that I have, although I did have a reaction from the seed oils, but mainly because of the cravings, because I like to not have cravings.
Yeah, I do too. And I don't know what it is about Mexican, but anytime I have ever been on any sort of diet, crazy diets, whether it was Weight Watchers or juice fasting or keto, anytime I've ever been, my kids knew that if they said Mexican, I would say, yes, let's go out to eat. Like, cause I always say no when somebody says, let's go out to eat. But they knew if they said Mexican, I would go. And I did that before Christmas and let myself have whatever I wanted. I ate my weight in chips and
Mm.
oh, I was miserable. It led to 4 days of boxes of chocolate covered cherries, and I was miserable. By Christmas
Mhm.
Day, I woke up crying. It was bad. It was really,
Yeah.
really bad. I think we have to we have to check ourselves, but, yeah, I mean, I think we have to check ourselves. I would love to get to a point where I can go do something like that and allow myself to just have what everybody else is having and have it just be fine and just have it be that one meal. But I usually do fajitas, and I get like all the meats and just tell them to keep everything else. And then I'd use the sour cream and the cheese and the queso. I mean, I'm sure there's seed oils in there, but that doesn't cause cravings like the chips do. So yeah, it's always Mexican. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is. So when you switched, aside from your brother, did you have any kind of backlash from friends or family, or like how did people react when you said you were switching to that?
Yeah, no, I really didn't have. I think because I was so crazy that everyone was really scared I was gonna go to the psych ward,
Sure. Mhm.
that they were just like, "Okay, we're glad that she's stable." And then when I went back to work full time in June, so I started eating February, and then I went back to work full time in June,
Right.
like, they were just like, "Oh my gosh, we she's back from the dead." Like, they
Yeah.
didn't expect me to be able to function.
Mhm.
And then I was paying my own rent. I was like, I was stable. I was functioning. So
Mhm.
nobody really gave me a hard time. Or if they did, I was so oblivious. I was just happy that my brain was working and I didn't even care.
Yeah. So what's a typical day of eating look like now?
Um, I really enjoy fasting. I know that sounds bizarre, but I like to fast because I can. And it just feels so good to be in control of that. So lately I've really been uh testing out the limits of dry fasting. I
Mhm.
really enjoy that because my body actually like makes its own water and I think that's the coolest thing in the whole world.
Yeah.
But, what I'm eating, it's usually a grass-fed, grass-finished, my local ground beef, or a steak. I love my new thing that I love to do is I put a roast in the Instant Pot, and I pour just tons of water on it, and I put a fourth of a cup of horseradish,
Mm.
and it is so good. Something about the horseradish, like, tenderizes the meat and then just flavors the water just enough, and then salt, and so I have roast a lot.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm glad you can have something like horseradish without that causing any kind of trouble. I've had
Yeah.
some horseradish with, like on occasion, very rarely, I will make my own cocktail sauce with some horseradish and a little bit of sugar-free ketchup so that I can have like a shrimp cocktail kind of thing. I do crave the ketchup after that for a little while, I guess, because of the sweetness, but it's interesting because electrolytes don't bother me. The sweetness of of the flavor electrolytes don't bother me, I don't think. So yeah, it's interesting the things that we can try and get away with. And that's what I love so much about the carnivore diet, and I think that's the point many people miss, is that the carnivore diet is such an amazing elimination diet because you cut everything else out except for these inflammatory foods. And then you can add things back in one at a time and see what you can eat. And I've told this story before, but I had cut out coffee and I added decaf back in about 6 months ago. And now every day I get to decide if I want my thumb to hurt or not, because my thumb hurts when I drink decaf. And so I get to decide every day if I want my thumb to hurt or if I want to skip the decaf. And most of the time I skip it, but on occasion I'll have it. And I know that I can. I know it's not going to make me sick, but it will make my little thumb hurt.
Yeah. I did not break my addiction to coffee until I was a year and a half in, because I knew that I was already going through so much to break and I was hardcore addicted to caffeine. And so whenever I did break my addiction, it was July 4th of 2020. It felt so good because with bipolar disorder, you have these highs and these lows. And then and then caffeine was giving me that high and then I would crash. And so it was mimicking bipolar disorder. And so I didn't like that. And I didn't like being dependent on a substance. So when I broke my addiction, it was a good year and a half in. So I don't recommend that people break their addiction to caffeine at the beginning. Yeah. So the caffeine was giving me the highs and then the crashes afterwards. And it was mimicking bipolar disorder with the mania and the depression. And I didn't want to be dependent on a substance. So I don't recommend people quit caffeine right out the gate. Wait until you're stable with carnivore. And then if you want to, but man, I am so free now, not even being on caffeine. Like that's a miracle.
I love that. Because I think so many people say, no caffeine, no sugar substitutes, no spices. And people are like, oh, I'm out. Like, there is no way I can do that. Like, it's a deal breaker for some people, the caffeine especially, but sometimes even things like the spices and things like that can be a total deal breaker. And I think in the beginning, we have to give people grace. Like, if you want to keep your coffee, by golly, you keep your coffee. You want to keep your coffee with your cream, with, a little bit of stevia in it, you keep your coffee. Like, because being on an extremely low carb diet and eliminating those other processed foods, things from your life is going to change your life enough that you might want to give up the caffeine on your own. But I think we have to give people grace there and not give people a hard time for not giving up every little thing. I think we have to keep some things at the beginning to make it doable, because the worst thing would be somebody's doing great with carnivore and 2 weeks in, they're like, I have got to have a cup of coffee. So they just give in and eat whatever they want.
Yeah. And the object is compliance.
Right.
It's not for us to just like have our little carnivore card. It's to set a plan and then to comply to that and then to reinforce that you can be successful with this.
Right. So maybe your plan includes coffee and a little bit of stevia along with your meat, eggs, and cheese. So fine. So be it. Like, do what you need to do to get through it and give up those other things. And if you need a second cup of coffee to not have the donut at work when everybody else is eating a donut, have the second cup of coffee, for crying out loud. Just do it. I think it's so important that we leave some of that open for people, just so that we don't discourage people from even trying it, because it's so easy for people to say, this is nuts and I can't have my coffee, so I'm not doing it, And so what about the carnivore diet is it that helped you so much with your MS? Like, I know that you've done research and things like that. So what about the carnivore diet is it that helps people with that?
It was the animal fat for me. MS is a deteriorated myelin sheath on your nerves. And that myelin sheath is made out of fat. So whenever you eat more animal fat, it literally rebuilds that myelin sheath. And that's what is happening is you have these breakdown in communication with your nerves. And then your brain doesn't tell your legs to walk or your arm to lift or your hand to be able to grasp. And so the more animal fat that you get, the better those synapses are. And then you're able to function. And I'm able to do CrossFit now.
Yeah, that is so amazing. It's really hard to watch people that have that diagnosis just kind of fall into an I can't do anything kind of mentality and just kind of give up on life, right?
And they keep eating chips and they keep eating cookies and they're just like, I might as well just eat my life away. And if they would just eat a steak instead and just see, I haven't had one client who's not improved their symptoms with MS when they stopped eating sugar and processed foods and eat more animal fat.
And that just shows you how strong the addiction is. And so, a lot of times, and I'm sure you say this too, I say to people, if you don't think you're addicted to carbs and sugar and processed food, give them up for a couple of weeks. Just say, okay, I'm not going to eat them for a couple of weeks, and just don't. And then you'll see that it is an addiction, because you will want those things more than you have ever wanted anything in that 2-week period. You will be like, I have got to have some sugar. I've got to have a cookie or something. Like, it's just amazing how addicted we can be to something like that isn't even listed as an addictive substance.
Yep. So true.
Totally, totally addictive. Okay, so let's talk about your coaching, because you mentioned that just a minute ago about your clients. And I think your coaching is amazing. And this is not for, let's say, people like me who I'm having trouble sticking to the carnivore diet. Like, I'm having trouble with that. Do I come to you?
It depends on the reason that you're having trouble doing that. If if you're just like needing to lose 5 pounds, or if you're just like not wanting to like have a social outing where you eat something different than everybody else, then I'm probably not the coach for you. The ones that I help are the ones who have either childhood trauma or relational trauma, or like negative self-talk, where they have a lot of emotional baggage. And that's the reason why they are not able to continue to do what they want to do. And also I help people who have binge eating and eating disorders, and those who have mental illness. Because I have my master's in clinical counseling, so I've practiced as a therapist. And so it's so important that we remove the sugar and the processed food from your brain. But then there is so much more that we can do to really go back and to heal some of those traumas.
So what is it about processed foods that makes them so addictive? Why can't we stop?
It's so interesting. Dr. Joan Iflin wrote the book, Processed Food Addiction, and she goes into the way that the scientists have actually found the bliss point in processed foods. And it's a perfect combination of fat, sugar, and salt. And that's why it is literally designed for us to be addictive.
And that's why they say you can't have just one, because they know you can't have just one.
And I can't. I still can't to this day. If I have one, I'm going to have the whole bag. It's just the way I work. And so even though I'm 5 years into this, I'm not cured. This is an incredible tool to be able to manage my eating disorder.
Yeah, it really is amazing. And there's something about the fat and the protein where they keep you satisfied so much greater and so much longer than the carbs. And I've heard people say this before, like, if you have just finished your meal and you think you're stuffed and you can't eat anything else, and you leave some food on your plate even because you're so full, but then they bring out a delicious looking dessert or ice cream, suddenly you have room. And there's that joke like, oh, that goes into a different stomach.
Yeah.
It doesn't go into a different stomach, but your brain makes room for it, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Every time. Every time.
Yeah. Every time.
And I found that for some people, they need more intense help. Like I have one client who I was 2 weeks into working with her, and she said, I feel like you moved in with me. And I love that, because they know that they have access to me. They know that we're going to get through this. And even if they send me a message, I might not see it until the next day, but they put a pin in it. And so even though it was 3:00 in the morning, they were standing in front of the fridge and they were contemplating that cake. They sent me a message instead. And then they decided to not eat the cake. And then we talked about it the next day. So the work that I do is really intense, and we are breaking a lot of stuff that sometimes developed in childhood trauma.
Yeah. I know so many people that had childhood trauma, and I'm one of them, who ended up later with terrible eating disorders that controlled their lives. And, for some people, it's drug abuse. For some people, it's alcohol abuse. There are all different kinds of ways that it can manifest in us. And I almost feel like food is harder, because you can give up drugs and you can give up alcohol. Now, I'm not saying that's easy. I know that that's not easy, but you can give those things up and not be surrounded by it all the time.
Yep.
But you tell yourself, you can't give up food, so you have to be able to eat. And it's really hard to give up those foods that if you have a normal job, they're going to be there. You go to birthday parties and holiday gatherings, those food is going to be there. So it's not like you can just say, well, I just won't go to those parties anymore. Every party, it's like if you're an alcoholic or a drug addict, you can just not go to those parties anymore. I mean, it's going to be hard for you. I know that. It's going to be a hard decision. It's going to be hard to watch all your friends going to those parties, and you won't get to go anymore, and you have to control that. But having to control that at a party or a function or a gathering, there's always food. And I think that makes it so much harder.
Yeah. And I think that's why it requires so much support as well.
Mhm.
And that's what I love about the carnivore community. I love about Carnivore Revolution and all of the different conversations that we're having,
Yeah.
because we need to be able to know that there's somebody else out there. I just had a clarity call just an hour ago with a client, or a new client, and she was just like, I just wanted to know that you're real. And I was just like, I'm real. I'm
Yeah.
really real. I'm really here, because in her environment, she was the only one. She was the only one not eating sugar and processed foods. And
Yeah.
so it's so important to have that support to go, hey, I'm here, and I'm eating this way. I'm here and I've resolved bipolar disorder. I've resolved multiple sclerosis. Like, it is possible. And so I think it's so important for us to be able to have these conversations.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And we have to not be shy about the addictions we had or the problems that we had or the mental illness that we have, because the fact that we are fixed or we are doing better, um, is our testimony, and that's our story, and that's how we bring other people in to try it and to see. And maybe you don't like it, maybe it doesn't work for you, but it's always worth trying, especially for so many of us. Like, I felt like I had tried everything over the 37 years or however long it was that I had disordered eating. I was 12 when I bought my first diet pills. And so people can relate to those stories from us, to your depression and bipolar and your MS and the binge eating. Like, people can relate to those things and say, well, if it worked for her, then maybe it can work for me. And so that's why we're out here sharing our stories, is just, if it reaches one or two people, then, we did our job with this video.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for them to know that, even if they've tried and failed carnivore a couple of times, like, get some support, get a
Yeah.
team, like, there's tons of coaches out there. Or if you need like intense help, I'm here, absolutely
Mhm.
here.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to know that it's not that you are broken, it's that you have a set of circumstances that
Mhm.
has caused you to be an addict and to be suffering. And what I love is, my clients, we don't say you have to be carnivore and carnivore is the only way. We
Mhm.
say we have to get away from the sugar and the processed foods,
Yeah. Mhm.
and whatever you feel that we need to incorporate. And sometimes it's a stair step. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's okay, we're going to include, this food, or we're going to include that food. And then as they get a month in, they're like, okay, I think I can get rid of dairy. Okay, I think I can get rid of this. And then
Mhm.
they shed stuff along the way.
That's wonderful. Emily, tell people how they can find you.
So you can go to emilypenton.com, and I'm on YouTube. Just put in Emily Penton, I'll pop up. Instagram, I'm Inner Clarity System, or at Inner Clarity System. And then on Facebook, I'm Emily Penton.
So wonderful to talk with you today. I think your story can really help a lot of people.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you so much for all that you're doing. I appreciate it. And I am so excited for my Simply Tallow candle and my Simply Tallow. Oh my gosh, this saved me. I think it was less than a month ago. It was -3 degrees here. And normally my skin's fine. It was like chapped, like
Oh, no.
cracking. And I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? I know what to do. And it was like,
Yay.
it was amazing. So thank you so much for your products. They're amazing.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And for those wondering, I did change the name after you got yours. I changed it to Purely Tallow because, just for reference, Simply Tallow was already taken, and it's somebody who doesn't use it. They also have the Instagram page and the Facebook page. Everything was taken, and they don't even use it. So it's Purely Tallow now. Purelytallow.com is where you can get it. So, but thank you so much for mentioning it. I'm really enjoying connecting with people in that way, and providing a product that seems to be working for people. So
It's
thank you for building it.
amazing. It's amazing.
Thank you. Okay. All right, Emily, thank you so much for hanging out today.
No problem.
Okay. We'll see you next time on the Carnivore Revolution.